Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm obviously joined by the Minister for Education, Alan Tudge, by the Head of Operation COVID Shield, Lieutenant General Frewen, and the Chief Medical Officer of Australia, Professor Paul Kelly. We're following up on the Prime Minister's announcement in relation to the release of the Australian Technical Advisory Group on immunisation advice with regards to the vaccination of children 12 to 15-year-olds, as well as an update on the national rollout. In particular, the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation has considered and recommended that Pfizer be made available to all children 12 to 15 years of age. We are following their advice and following the sequencing that they have suggested, and as a consequence of that, we will open up bookings for vaccinations as of the 13th of September for all children aged 12 to 15. This builds on the fact that since August the 9th, we have opened up vaccinations for immunocompromised children, children with Indigenous heritage, and children in remote communities, as well as the addition of those on the NDIS subsequently. Importantly, what that means is that we're in a position to ensure that all children and all families who seek their children to be vaccinated between the ages of 12 to 15 will be able to do so this year. We're in a position to move from the 13th on the basis of the advice, and that's a carefully sequenced plan. We're opening up, as you know, for 16 to 39-year-olds as of Monday. So that's a very important step, and some states and territories have already done that, and we thank them and recognise that, and we'll continue to work with all of the states and territories on that front. In addition to that, if the Australian Technical Advisory Group and the TGA approve the provision of Moderna for 12 to 18-year-olds, we will also make that available. These vaccines, and General Frewen will go into more detail on this, will be available through the usual channels. In particular, general practices, Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations, Commonwealth vaccination clinics, Moderna through the pharmacies, and in addition to that, as states and territories are in a position, they will make these vaccines available through both state vaccination clinics and where they choose to run school-based programs through school-based programs. So I think that's an extremely important next step in the plan and the rollout program. In relation to the actual progress of the program, 307,000 vaccinations yesterday. In particular, what we're seeing is now almost 18.4 million vaccinations nationally that have occurred. And of note is that primary care has now delivered over 10 million vaccinations. So to our GPs and our pharmacists, to those in Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations, and in particular to our Commonwealth vaccination clinics, I just want to say thank you. You're doing an amazing job. The first doses are at 56%, or 11.55 million. There's a very important point here which I think we're now in a position to reflect upon. In order to achieve the 70% mark, we need to have 14.5 million Australians vaccinated, another 3 million Australians to get to the first dose 70% mark. In order to achieve the 80% mark, we need to have approximately 16.5 million Australians 16 plus vaccinated. So that's less than 5 million to go from where we are in order to achieve the 80% first dose mark. And of course, the second doses follow that. But that is a sign that we are closing, that these goals are within sight. The capacity to achieve that 80% is real and present. And we see that with what we've already been able to do as a nation with regards to our different age groups. Our over 50s are almost at the 80% mark for first doses, 77.2%. Our over 60s are over that 80% threshold at 82.1%. and the over 70s are well over that threshold at 86.6%. So these things are happening on a grand scale. In 1 week, almost 1.9 million vaccinations. And so when you see that we need less than 5 million more first vaccinations to pass that 80% mark, we can see that these goals are attainable, in sight, and closer every single day. So I think those are important signs of hope for Australia. Alan?
Well, thanks, Greg. This decision to open up Pfizer to the for the 12 to 15-year-olds is clearly a very important decision, and it really provides that extra protection and peace of mind to kids, to parents and to teachers. And particularly as we look to reopen schools in New South Wales, the ACT and Victoria, where they have been closed. And I want to particularly make reference to the ATAGI advice and on the third page, where it refers to the fact that vaccinating adolescents is anticipated to reduce disruption to their education by preventing disease and reducing potential transmission and outbreaks in schools. And it also goes on to say that a reduction in the number and severity of outbreaks resulting in school closures and extensive public health interventions would also likely reduce disruption to parents and family work with clear economic benefits. So this will make a significant difference in terms of providing that peace of mind and ensuring that schools can again be reopened and ensuring that those schools which are already open can stay open. Now, also note that this becomes available on the 13th of September for those 12 to 15-year-olds. So I certainly encourage all families to take advantage of that. It's a week before school holidays begin in the largest states on the eastern seaboard, just a couple of weeks before the school holidays begin in Western Australia. That also provides, of course, an opportunity to take your child down and get them vaccinated. I'll just also, while I'm here, just note that the New South Wales government has announced their school reopening plan today, and I want to commend the New South Wales government for that plan. What I think it does is provides confidence and certainty for parents and students, that they can see that light on the horizon. They know when the schools are going to be open, they can look forward to that time, and they can plan accordingly. And of course, I would love to see similar confidence and certainty being able to be provided to Victorian and ACT parents as well, in order to give them that peace of mind that schools can be opened safely, and for kids to be able to get back to school. You know, getting back to school is just so important for kids. You know, the mental health consequences of children not being at school has just been devastating. We know that from the official statistics in terms of the presentations to whether it be to Headspace centres or to Kids Lifeline, almost the doubling of the number of calls to the Butterfly Foundations, which deal with eating disorders, which is such an insidious condition. And if we can get these schools back open again, we do so safely, get the community activities open again and do that safely, then we can help address some of those mental health issues and, of course, enhance kids' learning as well. So I welcome the New South Wales plan and look forward to a similar plan being announced by Victoria.
General.
Thank you, Ministers. Look, momentum in the rollout continues to build. We have additional points of presence coming online, additional GPs administering Pfizer. Soon we'll have the pharmacy network administering Moderna as well. And the numbers continue to grow, which is great. And this inclusion of the 12 to 15-year-olds today is another important step in the program. We have already made arrangements to have 16 to 19-year-olds included from Monday. And of course, previously we have made Pfizer available to the 12 to 15-year-olds with other either underlying conditions, Indigenous kids, and kids in remote and regional areas. So these 12 to 15-year-olds now will broadly be able to make bookings from the middle of next month. I encourage everybody to get along, parents, to get your kids booked in, and to have a bit of patience while You get bookings as you can, but we look forward to getting the 12 to 15-year-olds through the door. Thank you.
And Paul.
Thanks, Minister. So, of course, the situation in Australia is different wherever you're living today. Here in the ACT, we're in lockdown, same throughout New South Wales and Victoria. Schools are closed. So this is a really important announcement today. We know that the outbreaks that are occurring in those three jurisdictions do include a proportion of children. The proportion is a bit higher than last year, partly because of the protective effect of vaccination in older cohorts, in the adults. So a wonderful decision by ATAGI, and we'll follow through with that plan to vaccinate children in that age group. An important point to make about children and COVID. Whilst the numbers are there and we're finding cases, most of those are in family clusters. Some of them have been related to school clusters. But almost entirely, the disease in children is much less severe than it is in adults. So that's an important component. We have seen some hospitalisations in that age group. Most of those have been in New South Wales, and most of those have been for social reasons rather than because they are severely sick. But there will be, and there has been, some more serious cases of COVID in those age groups, so vaccination, very important. The question might come that why has this not been announced earlier? I think it's been very important that ATAGI has looked at that risk and benefits analysis of vaccination. Minister Tudge has mentioned some of those wider benefits for society. There has been some concerns about side effects in younger people for mRNA vaccines, particularly related to myocarditis and pericarditis, so the heart muscle and the surrounds of the heart muscle can get some inflammation. There have been reports from overseas of that happening, particularly in young males. But ATAGI has done their due diligence in relation to that and have made that decision, as they always do, looking at risk and benefit, and has fallen on the side of benefit. And so we will push ahead based on that advice in rolling out that program for adolescents. In the meantime, very importantly, the parents and teachers are being protected by that announcement of increasing the availability of Pfizer to that 16 to 39 age group. So they have that secondary effect. This will add to that when it becomes available. Thank you, Minister.
So look, I'll start over here with Fee and then work across the room.
Obviously that age group can't be vaccinated. What would you say to parents in Australia who have kids in that age group who are worried?
Sure. So two things and then I'll turn to Paul. The best way to protect your child is to be vaccinated yourself. We know that most children who do develop COVID catch it within the household environment from an adult. And so the best way to protect your child is to be vaccinated yourself. Secondly, as we've had international evidence, we've continued to open up to different age groups, down to 16-year-olds and now down to 12 to 15-year-olds. And as there are trials and as there are applications, we'll consider those. I'm not aware of any programs that are underway for children under 12, but I think Paul is best placed to anybody in Australia to address that.
Thanks, Minister. So the Minister is quite correct. There's nowhere in the world that has a program for vaccinating children under the age of 12. There are clinical trials right down to a very young age happening in different countries, and we'll be watching those very carefully. I spoke to the head of the TGA this week, Professor Skerritt, to ask what the latest on that was, and he affirmed that no regulator in the world has received data in relation to under 12s. So that we have to rely on that secondary effect, as the Minister said. Parents, please get vaccinated. These older siblings now, from mid-September, will also be part of that cocooning effect of protection. Teachers, please get vaccinated. Anyone who has anything to do with young kids, please get vaccinated. I think I've made my point clear. Now's the time to make that appointment and get that vaccination started.
Great. Paul?
The ATAGI advice says that 12 to 15-year-olds are a lower priority than young adults who might be circulating more in the community and older Australians. And it notes that we still have constrained supplies. So two questions. Will a 13th September start date be enough to ensure that the 12 to 15s don't crowd out young adults from getting appointments? And secondly, will you follow their advice and give older Australians a choice of vaccine so that some AstraZeneca hesitant older people can get Pfizer before a 12 to 15-year-old?
Sure. So two things. Firstly, we have followed Atagi's advice, which does explain exactly that sequencing. Yours is a very fair question, and I'll let General Frewen address the capacity. But we've based the date of the 13th on the ability to ensure that we have the commencement of the 16 to 39-year-old program. We've also already seen significant vaccinations in 16 to 39-year-olds around the country through different state-based programs, through the fact of vocational roles, or through the fact of vulnerability. The other thing in relation to this, we said from the outset that we have whole-of-population access to vaccines. We've already seen extraordinary levels of vaccination amongst our older Australians. I think I mentioned just before that it's 77% for the 50-plus, 82% for the 60-plus, and 86.6%. And those figures are increasing daily. I follow the over 60s and over 70s on a daily basis. The over 60s are increasing by about 0.4% a day. The over 70s are increasing by about 0.3% a day. So what we're seeing is strong, continuous demand, and we'll provide more advice on that later, but we've always said there would be whole-of-population access during the course of the year. So we've followed Atagi advice to the letter. I don't know, JJ, if you wanted to add anything?
Sure, Minister. Thanks. So look, we've been balancing risk, supply and the health advice in the prioritisation. So the Minister's just spoken to the very good coverage rates we've got in the most vulnerable, the over 70s and the over 60s, above 80% first dosing. Since then, we've had the Doherty modelling now, which has raised the prominence of the high transmissibility groups. So we've worked within supply to bring in the 16 to 39-year-olds now as an additional priority group. As I've mentioned, we've already focused on the most vulnerable and the 12 to 15-year-olds in relation to the Atagi advice that was provided on that earlier. And in this sequencing now, we have been balancing the additional points of presence that I've spoken about, the additional vaccines that we have coming online, and we have got in October the very large amounts of Pfizer that are coming. So bookings from the middle of next month, from the 13th, we think will sit very well with the available vaccines at that stage, and we've deliberately sequenced this to make sure that we do give people the best access in the best and most appropriate sequence.
Sarah.
Just a couple of questions. One, on the 12 to 15-year-old age group, do we have any idea if there's much hesitancy from parents? We obviously have a lot of data regarding hesitancy of different age groups. Do we know how parents are feeling about giving 12 to 15-year-olds a jab? And on school-based vaccination programs, we obviously have this September 13 date. Are we expecting schools at that point to be already giving out jabs to kids, or is it in a few months? And is that very much between the states and territories and the school, or are the feds involved?
Sure. So what we have developed is a youth vaccination program, and the youth vaccination program covers kids from 12 to 19. The 16 to 19s, their eligibility starts from Monday, and across the various jurisdictions, some of those kids have already been getting vaccinated. So I know in a couple of the states they've been taking year 12s in that 16 to 19 range to state hubs and the like. So we're looking at school kids, we're looking at kids in care circumstances, out of home care sometimes, we're looking at youth that are in detention, we're looking at disadvantaged kids who might be homeless and so on. So we're looking at that broad spectrum. The school-based programs, we will work in consultation with the states and territories. Of course, when it comes to private and independent schools, that's a federal responsibility. The states have responsibility for the state school systems. Some things are already happening. There will be more comprehensive programs, more targeted programs, in-reach type programs into some of these facilities. It won't all start on the 13th, no. Some stuff already happening, but you'll see these programs taking shape over the sort of next month or so.